Good evening. Good evening. Tonight, global energy markets are flashing warning signals once again. This conflict isn't just pushing headline oil and gas prices higher, it's disrupting the deeper mechanics of the energy system, including the global ship fuel market, known as bunker fuel. And that matters more than many realize. Next post 1. The invisible market. Nearly 90% of global trade moves by sea. Every container ship depends on bunker fuel. When bunker fuel prices rise, the cost of moving goods increases, and eventually consumers feel it. Food prices, electronics, industrial materials. Peter Grunwald, co-CEO of Seascale Energy, calls this one of the most significant events in the bunker fuel market since 9/11. Suppliers are uncertain whether vessels will arrive on schedule. Shipping routes are being reassessed. Insurance premiums are climbing. Uncertainty is the oxygen of volatility. Next post 2. Qatar and LNG shockwaves. The latest trigger. Qatar temporarily halting LNG production at the world's largest export facility. The scale is nowhere near Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. But markets do not wait for crises to escalate. They price risk immediately. The memory of 2022 still shapes trader psychology. That year, European gas prices exploded. Inflation surged. Central banks tightened aggressively. Today's disruption is smaller, but the psychological impact is real. Next post 3. Commodities versus inflation hedges. Recent market data shows commodities beginning to diverge from inflation-protected bonds. Treasury inflation-protected securities, or TIPS, remain relatively stable. Meanwhile, commodity indices are climbing. That divergence signals a shift in expectations. Markets may be preparing for renewed inflation pressure driven by energy supply risks. Energy first, transport next, consumer prices later. Segment 4. Europe's exposure. Europe imports nearly all of its oil and most of its natural gas. The United States, in contrast, is a net exporter of energy. That difference matters. If oil prices surge, Europe feels the shock faster. If LNG supply tightens, Europe competes aggressively for cargo. The next 4 weeks could be decisive. Is this the beginning of a fresh energy crisis or merely a temporary disruption? Next post 5. Federal Reserve expectations shift. In the United States, traders are recalibrating rate cut expectations. Just last week, swaps markets were pricing roughly 61 basis points of Federal Reserve cuts in 2026. Now, that expectation has fallen to around 46 basis points. Less than 2 quarter-point cuts. Why? Because rising oil and gas prices increase inflationary pressure. And central banks cannot ease policy while inflation risks are rising. Next post 6. The inflation chain reaction. The mechanism is familiar. Energy supply disruption leads to higher oil and LNG prices, leads to rising transport and production costs, leads to broader inflation, leads to delayed rate cuts. We have seen this before. The question now is scale. Segment 7. Shipping and supply chains. If maritime insurance costs rise, if vessels reroute around conflict zones, if port congestion returns, global supply chains could tighten again. Inflation does not require catastrophe. It requires sustained uncertainty. Next post 8. Are we entering another energy crisis? At this stage, analysts stress this is not 2022. Global inventories are not critically low. Production has not collapsed. Strategic reserves remain available. But markets are forward-looking, and forward risk has increased. Next post 9. What investors are watching. Over the coming weeks, markets will monitor LNG output levels in Qatar, oil price momentum, European gas storage data, shipping route stability, Federal Reserve communications. Any escalation could amplify volatility. Energy markets are the bloodstream of the global economy. When energy prices rise sharply, inflation expectations shift. When inflation expectations shift, central banks adjust. And when central banks adjust, global asset prices move. The next month will determine whether this moment becomes a brief disruption or the start of another inflation cycle. For now, markets remain cautious. Governments are watching. And traders are modeling familiar patterns from a recent and painful past. We will continue monitoring developments across energy, inflation, and global growth. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay tuned for more news. Subscribe.